What's up, peers, and welcome to the World Crypto Network here for the next series in open source everything. And peers, this is going to be a very, very good conversation with a couple good peers here on the network who have done some really cool stuff with the Lightning Network. And we have many, many interesting talks to do about how to do channel management and liquidity management. So there are a bunch of know-how and experience here on the conversation, and we are joined by all the peers from the Lightninghood. Let's get through them one by one. So first of all, Crypto Pura Vida, what's up? Thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing, and how did you get into Bitcoin? I think you're muted. Are you there?
Hey, thanks a lot. Sorry, I was hearing some reverb there. Doing well, appreciate it. Hopefully everybody can hear me and it's just me talking, I think. Hey, thanks a lot. Sorry, I was hearing
Nope, no, you have the sound as well. If you
appreciate
had
it.
headphones, that would be perfect.
It's just me
Or
talking.
mute the YouTube video.
Hey, thanks a lot.
The endless echo.
Or mute the YouTube video.
Okay, echo is gone. The technical difficulties of Google Hangout.
The endless echo.
And it's back.
Man, I heard my voice. I sound pretty damn good.
And it's back.
Man, I heard my voice. I sound pretty damn good.
This is awesome. It's a remix.
Man, I heard my voice.
Okay, it's gone again. Okay, well, Crypto Pura Vida has some troubles, but that's also nice. We're joined also by Petro Veritas, or Maurizio Matos here on Twitter. How are you doing, and how did you get into all this Lightning fun?
Hey, thanks for having me. Just, following conversation on Twitter, and I think someone was sharing about the Casa node, and that's kind of how I got into Lightning. I always was following it, but then once I saw that it was going to be slightly easier to get on, that's when I got more involved. And then I guess just like the bear market focusing people's attention was kind of what got me to sit down and really take a deep dive look into Lightning. And yeah, kind of haven't looked back since.
Awesome. So yes, and absolutely, we've had some nice Twitter conversations and good ones in the Telegram chat as well. So that really looking forward to elaborating on this here. And we're also joined by Brandon, or by Coinbeezy. What's up?
Hey, I'm doing well. And I would also kind of echo what Mauricio said. I kind of had a similar story in terms of how I got interested in the Lightning Network. I originally was trying to set up my own Lightning node on a Raspberry Pi and kind of really struggled with it, ended up giving up. And then when I saw the Casa node and about this plug and play solution in order to get on the Lightning Network, thought that was really awesome. So made the purchase. And after kind of, playing around with that and getting onboarded on the Lightning, was really amazed by all of the applications that were available and the different things that you could do with the technology. And then, I just kind of ended up going down the rabbit hole of the Lightning Network, and now I'm hooked on it. It's been a great experience, and every day I get to learn something new about what this technology can bring about. It's really awesome.
Yes, the technology is absolutely fascinating, and we're all hooked by it, and can't stop talking about it. And that's why we're all here. But one peer who is not even going to start talking about it is Curly Dreams, who is also joining us here in the conversation. But he is one of these nasty privacy maximalists that somehow think they have a right to be left alone. Crazy people. So he's going to join us today, quote unquote, only in the chat. So that is really nice. But he's also part of the crew, and really looking forward to get your insights here in written form. And yes, you three people, and well, Mauritius is just a good friend, but especially here, Pura Vida and Coinbeezy, and Curly Dreams, you all have gotten together to start this little Lightninghood thing. And we're all good fans of that, and you've done some really nice things. So could you tell us a little bit about what is this Lightninghood, and why did you start this?
All right. So am I DJing again? I just want to check real quick. Are we good?
Well, let's see.
Hopefully all right, we're good. Pura Vida here. Hey, just wanted to thank you and sorry for the DJ issues there. So Lightninghood, honestly, that kind of started, I think, with Beezy a little bit, and Mauricio, and just kind of a few of us just chit-chatting about different things in the Casa group when we all bought our Casa nodes, and we were pretty much one of the first, I guess we were some of the first people in the group there, just getting our nodes, getting them set up, getting it figured out. We were kind of chit-chatting, and I think Coinbeezy threw out the idea of, man, it'd be great to have a place to have all Bitcoin and Lightning Network related questions, white papers, information, anything people may want, all in one place, and that's it was kind of the light bulb in our heads there. And it just kind of evolved into what you see today. We're trying to be one of the go-to places for all that information for people, whether it's Lightning related, Bitcoin related, memes, games, a few things in a shop. I mean, it's all about the education at this point. We're all avid users. There's 99.9% of the rest of the population that still probably doesn't even know what Bitcoin is. They've heard of it on the news or whatever, but we got to have the spots for people to learn about it. So that's kind of where it evolved from. And, who knows where it's going to go, but, our goal is more education, just get it out there, get it in front of people, and create a resource page.
Awesome, Busy. But why are you all in this?
Yeah, so I'm exactly what Pura Vida said. It was really just about sort of the education. I think, we were all batch one buyers of the Casa node. And, at the time, I felt like it was a little bit difficult to figure out like all of the different things that you could use Lightning for, all the different like apps or laps that you could kind of experiment with. So that's sort of where we got the idea about coming up with the resource page, trying to put everything in one location. But even more than that, there were quite a few other resource pages that did exist at the time, but a lot of them were kind of stale or hadn't been updated recently. And we wanted to kind of create a resource that people could look to for almost daily updates to the resource list, especially as, the recent growth with the Lightning Network and applications has been pretty insane. There's new stuff coming out daily. Like I can barely keep up these days. I look on Twitter and there's always some new application or some new wallet or, some new thing that somebody's testing out with Lightning. And we just want to be the people that can, help people more easily find this information, because going through Twitter can be a little bit cumbersome and it's really easy to miss things. So we want to just provide that resource to people where they always know to look to find the latest and greatest in terms of what's happening with the Lightning Network. So it's really about the education, and for us, also getting to learn and experiment with the technology in different ways too. So we want to continue to branch out and continue to grow and expand.
Awesome.
Maurizio, go ahead. Why are you in this, especially regarding educating and raising others?
Well, so I guess just to take a step back to go back to what Crypto Pura Vida was saying. So I met all these guys and in the Casa group once we all got our first batch Casa nodes, and I think I saw an article about BitMEX doing network topography and trying to figure out like the best way to set up like channels. And they had 3 nodes and they linked them all together to form like a loop. So I think I saw Curly was not Curly, Crypto Video was pretty active in the group, and I don't remember at some point we decided to like link up together, and then we were trying to get more people in the group to like link to our node because then it would be a lot easier to kind of set up channels without having like the risk of randomly getting them closed. So I think that's how I initially got involved, and then we created like a Lightning pool channel to try to do the same thing, and then it kind of evolved from there. So, and I think I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, and I guess in the process of learning, trying to educate like all my friends and whoever I can kind of chat with about this, and so it's more like just trying to educate myself really, and the best way to teach, I guess the best way to learn is try to teach people. So that's kind of what my angle is really in this like space. And then I'm also just like a general Bitcoin supporter. So I guess that's why I'm more involved with Lightning these days.
That's awesome. And I really can only recommend here the Lightninghood Lightning resources page. It is really, really good. It has a bunch of cool information and pretty much all the relevant Lightning information. It is really long and really in depth. And I think if you want to, or if you want to get interested in Lightning Network or in any information whatsoever, you really need to have a page where you can or have all this information curated, where you no longer have to look it up. And definitely here, the Lightninghood resource list is amazing. It really is. I mean, I'm still scrolling. You see this? It really is long. There we have no, still not done. No, okay, now it's done. Okay. So it's huge, and that's good, right? We need pages like this, and that really helps for new initiates in order to understand more about this complex subject. So maybe my question would be, how do you curate this list? Where do you get all this information?
Crypto Pure Vita here. It's kind of a mix. So like Bisq was saying earlier, there were a lot of already existing pages that maybe weren't getting updated often, a little stale, not necessarily stale. They just weren't updated or just didn't have not enough people knew about them. So, some of the information was pulled from some of those sources, just to, white paper information, different things like that. But then from there, this space is evolving so quickly. And I'll be honest with you, I would say Twitter, Telegram, different things like that. You're seeing new things coming out, whether it's wallets, whether it's some GitHub changes going out that as soon as we see it, it's a struggle just to keep up with keeping notes on it so we can add them to the page. So I'll be honest with you, it's more or less from the Lightninghood side, the three of us keeping up to date on all of that, and then keeping notes so we can update it. And then Coinbeezy does a phenomenal job doing the weekly wrap up now, which we just started a couple weeks ago, and adding all the most relevant things. We saw that last week onto that. So it's there's a lot out there. We're just trying to keep up with it all and keep everybody up to date with it all as well. So.
Awesome. So, Bisq, how do you accumulate your information? How do you take this all in? And how do you make sure that you don't waste your time taking in stupid information?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a bit of a challenge, but like Pure Vita said, a lot of it does come from kind of going through Twitter, checking crypto Twitter, Telegram. There's some really good resources like the Lightning, I think it's called the Lightning Makers Telegram, which is basically just a group of developers building on Lightning. So it's pretty a good thing that I try to do is just reach out on a weekly basis to say, hey, is anyone working on a new project or have a new like game or something that they've been working on that they want to kind of share or shed light on. I tell them I want to add it to our list or I want to add it to kind of the weekly write-up. So that helps. And now that I guess we're getting a little bit more sort of awareness within the community. I think some people kind of reach out or will alert us of projects that they're working on and things like that. So that definitely helps make it a little bit easier. But you know, a lot of it is honestly just checking Twitter. Sometimes I can't always delve into what I'm seeing or what's coming out, so I have to like keep notes. I'll like see a tweet and like save the tweet, and like I have like a like on my phone like a almost like a notepad where I just like share a bunch of links to articles and stuff, and then I'll take the weekend when I actually have the free time and try to review everything that I've seen, and I use that weekly write up to kind of incorporate everything that I think is the most important, or not necessarily the most important, but you know, everything that people should be aware of that was either huge news or a really good analysis about the state of the Lightning Network or the future of the Lightning Network, and try to make it so it's like an easy digestible format for people to get a good summary of everything that happened in the week, or all the new games or applications or whatever that's being worked on, so that they can find it in one place. And we let people know what we've been adding to our website as well, because it can be a little bit difficult. You see how long that list of resources is. It can be a little difficult to kind of keep up with, you know, where you're finding things. So we want to try to, you know, make that easier for people.
Yes, exactly. I think these lists are a tremendous help for others because, you know, for you, this is pretty much a full-time, I don't want to say job, but you invest a lot of time and resources into this. Maybe not necessarily financial resources, but absolutely your time and your attention and your human ingenuity. So that is vitally important, and it is a tremendous service because all of this capital that is invested into the curation of this information is no longer has to be occurred by others who are getting started. And especially when the information that you curate here is truthful, then this is a tremendous source of information and knowledge. So Mauritius, but same question to you. How do you curate the information that you take in, especially in such a fast and experimental and crazy world like Bitcoin?
Well, I think I've relied really on Twitter to help get information directly from the source. You know, I used to look at a lot of the articles throughout the different Bitcoin related like websites, but it just seems like I just rather go and see the original post and like look at the conversation and see like what the reactions are. So it's just a lot of following up with conversations on the internet, unfortunately, and then also YouTube helps out a lot. So you know, like your channel, and then there's like some other channels that have very deep dives into like the different aspects of the technology help out. But you know, I think that's part of the challenge in the space is that it's not easy unless you're in there and just digging yourself, because there's not a lot of resources to kind of accurately summarize things for you and present them in like a simple way. So at this stage in the game, it's just a lot of effort to go in and meet the right people and join the right communities to get decent information. You know, hopefully someday that'll change, but that's how it is today.
Yes, awesome. But of course, the question is, I mean, you just bought this domain, right? And you just put this information together. But I mean, who are you to do this, right? What authority do you have? Did you ask for permission to share this information?
That's the nice thing. You don't need it. That's what's lovely about Bitcoin.
Max, you there?
Did we lose him?
We might have lost Max.
Oh, no.
Oh, wait, no, I'm back.
We couldn't do it without him.
I was about to start singing.
Oh, God. Ooh, good that I'm back.
There you go.
Awesome, but yeah, right. That's a cool thing. And but then, what motivated you to doing it? Was it just to accumulate these resources themselves, or for yourself, or what was the main motivation behind it? Because, for example, I see my archive of video and educational material as somewhat also as a kind of a reference point for myself. right? I can prove my cojones with this, right? And show that I have understood this information. So, what other or motivations did you have to curate this?
I mean, for me, the the bear markets are always a time to build, and I've got a bunch of friends close to where I live here that, during the hype cycle last year, or 2017 and all that, they just, that's all we could do is talk Bitcoin and, whatever other coins they wanted to talk about. And all, 2017 hits and you see what happens to the fiat price, which in the end, what is that? Does that really matter? No, not really. It's all about stacking the Satoshis right now. But that gave us all a chance to really kick back, let Lightning Network build, let us learn as much as we could. And at the same time, let us, the way I looked at it was we're building to help the future at that point as well with a resource page. So, while we're learning every day, we want other people to be learning just getting into the space. So people aren't just chasing a price. They're actually using it for the reason it should be used, being Bitcoin, Lightning Network, and whatever. So that was in the back of my mind how I always looked at it. I'm sure the other guys have varying opinions as well, but I'm sure collectively we're very similar in that aspect.
Yeah, this is Beezy. I would completely agree with Pura Vida and really echo his stance on kind of why we kind of built this thing in the first place. During the bear market, I completely agree. It's the best time to really try to build something or really dig in and continue to educate yourself on the merits of the technology, the things that are being built on it, and really kind of retool and retrain yourself, honestly, and your brain on, why you believe in this technology in the first place and why it's so significant. And even, challenging some of the original views that I may have had before. And in doing this, it really helped me to learn and become more educated about Bitcoin and about layer 2 solutions.
Still there? What is going on?
Can you hear me?
I can hear Beezy.
Okay.
I think some people can't hear us, though.
I think I got everybody.
We lost
Max,
Beezy.
can you still hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh. Is the conversation getting too spicy? We haven't even yet really started. I mean,
yeah, we haven't even talked about hard forks yet.
300 kilobyte block size. Come on.
Yeah.
But
Mauricio, you want to roll with it?
No, too spicy. Let's wait a little bit.
Well, okay, but then especially what I think is really great that you have defended and built up quite a bit is the concept of these liquidity pools. So you mentioned that especially the three peers here on the from Lightninghood, you met because you wanted to have inbound liquidity. So this was very much a meeting of peers who want to support each other in the financial network by committing Lightning Network routing funds to the payment channels so that they can more easily send and receive, especially the receive part, Lightning Network payments. So maybe could you a bit more explain the concepts behind these liquidity pools and why they might be so interesting?
Mauricio, go for it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, for the Lightning Network pools, so the concept is, rather than relying on something like autopilot to just open channels into the network, especially now that the technology is still being built out and we don't have necessarily easy ways to back up like the state of the channels. If you know your the other side of the channel, your peer, then if for whatever reason your node fails or something happens and you can't access I guess your original node, you could just reach out to them and ask them to just close the channel, and that way the the coins are kind of back into your account, and then you can reconnect into the network. So I think that's a really good benefit of, especially if you're not like super technical and you're just trying out the technology. It's safer to just have kind of all the angles covered. And since there's such a strong community, it's easy to find people and open up a channel to them. So I think that was the original intention, and so far it's worked out pretty well.
So I would agree with that. Exactly what Mauricio was just saying. I mean, initially when I first got my Casa node out, I said on autopilot 20 channels at, you know, whatever amount of Satoshis. But you don't know where that's going. Usually, you know, there's an algorithm in there that's pointing you in reliable nodes and what have you, but that does not guarantee that they won't close on you when the liquidity shifts or whatnot. So that's where this liquidity pool kind of came into play. It was a bunch of us getting together initially saying, all right, our nodes are running 24/7. Let's set up with each other, hook into each other, be confident that we're going to stay open with each other. So we're not, you know, tying up the funds with random peers that we can't assume the same thing with. The other thing is, if you think about it, it's an expense. Every channel you open at this point, it's also an expense. Any channel that you open that gets closed, because even whether it's you closing it or not, it's still an expense with an on-chain transaction. So, assuming that somebody you're connecting with that you don't know is going to stay open and not cost you that expense, that's a tough thing, you know, to swallow, depending on how many channels you're dealing with. So this pool, or the pool we kind of created and I think it expanded on, allows us to connect to peers that we've been in contact with, whether it started in the Casa group, through Telegram, through Twitter, what have you, that'll stay connected with each other. You know, mutual closes. If somebody needs to close, they tell you, which is nice because then you're at least aware where it's coming from and where it's going. So I think that's an important thing until some of the advancements in Lightning Network or LND specifically come out. I think that's a good way to handle it. So that's kind of where we came out with that liquidity pool initially, and it's worked very well, I think, and it's been growing ever since.
Bisq, are you back? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I completely agree with those guys also. I think it's really nice that, you know, when you're looking for peers to connect with.
Is he back?
I don't think he is. Or is
Can you hear me?
So Bisq, I can hear you, but they seem not to be able to. Why don't you just log off and log back on?
Got it.
Have you tried turning it off and on again? It works 60% of the time.
Is
every
it
time.
It might not be plugged in.
Max, how about you? What's your take on liquidity initially?
Well, it's quite interesting because I experienced both very organic growth with my first node, which I had open for a long time, and which I started to connecting to more and more peers just for testing it, and precisely because it was open for such a long time, I had it quite well balanced and quite well connected to the entire network, so that was very nice. However, then it was on a Raspberry Pi, and I wanted to upgrade that hardware. So I got the Nodl, which is with a bit more powerful Rock64 board. And then I had to reset or restart my entire node. And then, of course, when you start from scratch, to have outbound liquidity is easy. You just use a Wasabi wallet, UTXO, that has an anonymity set of, 100 or something after a couple rounds. And then you open a couple channels to nodes that are rather well connected, right? So I had a 0.1 Bitcoin UTXO from Wasabi, and I decided to spend roughly in not quite Pareto, but open some very large channels. So one with 4 million UTXO, or with 3, or with 2 channels or 2 nodes that are very well connected. and then use additional funds, but with smaller channels, to then also open channels to other peers who are less well connected or just smaller nodes, and then also peers from the liquidity pool. So, for example, we together have a couple nodes open, and these are those smaller nodes. And then, however, I want to increase that number in the future. And I was especially surprised on how easy it was to get inbound liquidity, because that's really the tough thing, right? And there you really helped me with the liquidity pool, because I simply said, okay, I have a node right here. I would like some inbound liquidity. Does one of you have some outbound liquidity to give out? And then the cool thing is that when eventually, right, you find someone, and when that person opens, even if it's just a little bit, a couple of 100,000 sats, that's something. And that helps you balance out your node, even though you're not spending something. But when someone is opening a nice, good channel to you, then you will have a well-balanced node that is good for routing. So that is awesome.
Yeah, and another thing that I was on vacation a few weeks ago and was really relying a lot on like Blue Wallet and like the Wallet of Satoshi, and although they're hosted wallets, one thing that is like a nice little trick to get some liquidity, inbound liquidity from your main node, is if you just send money to yourself on one of those hosted wallets, you're basically creating some inbound liquidity, and then you have to, I guess, deal with money that you put on the hosted wallet. But if you're just trying to get some like last minute liquidity and you can't, that's one way of doing it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll be honest, for me, I just hooked into Blue Wallet yesterday just to test it out and play around with it. I really like it, I'll be honest with you, even though it's a hosted wallet. I was using Shango. I had it hooked into my my node at home here, but when I switched my node to Tor, I can't get it hooked up, or I haven't figured that part out yet. So I have changed, at least temporarily, to Blue Wallet, and it's actually really easy to use, very user friendly, which, I mean, for onboarding purposes is a phenomenal wallet to have out there. So I know there's a lot of cool things coming with LND, with Neutrino and different things that'll, we'll see what that does to some of these hosted wallets. But, initially, I think they've created a very, very user-friendly wallet that, your grandmother can use if you teach her what a Satoshi is, So
Right.
I agree with you. I was kind of hesitant at first because not your keys, not your coin.
I remember that. I remember you were like, it's a hosted wallet.
Yeah, but
I'm like, it's 10 cents.
Yeah, but you make a good point, because in the end, it's not like I'm storing everything on that wallet. I put what I want on it, and that's it. I'm willing to, if it gets lost, it gets lost. But to me, it was more important to have a Tor, my Lightning node with Tor behind it, and then I'll figure the rest out as it comes. But yeah, so.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely space. It's a big space, so there's definitely enough space in the world for all of these type of solutions. Like, I don't think that these hosted wallets, or like even Neutrino, is going to necessarily completely replace the need to have like your own full node. At least not anytime soon. So, I think that there's it's good to have a lot of options out there. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys can hear me now, but I would completely echo that. I think it's great to have options for all users. I mean, I had to use Blue Wallet, or I've been using it since I've had issues with my Casa node recently. But I mean, it is a really easy setup process. And I think if it can bring more users into the Lightning Network ecosystem, or if it can, just get more people to try out the tech, then I think I'm all for it. And I think that people it's kind of like a natural progression, where I think most people, when they first start out, they try a custodial wallet or some kind of custodial solution just because it's easier typically with the UI. But then as they start to learn more about the technology and things like that, things with privacy, why you shouldn't trust a custodian necessarily, then people start to gravitate towards more so like running their own full node and things like that. There's kind of like a natural evolution, I think, about that process. But I do think that Blue Wallet is awesome. I think the LAT browser is really cool too. I find myself like playing like Lightning Spin and some of the other different games like that. And I think it makes it really easy to enjoy those things, especially on the go. So, props to them.
I think they're going to add Space Invaders, by the way.
Nice. That'd be pretty sweet. So what do you guys think of the Cash App? Do you think that they're going to integrate something like Neutrino, or do you think they're going to go like hosted, kind of like Blue Wallet? What do you think makes the most sense?
Personally, I think they're going to, well, part of me thinks they're going to have to do it hosted similar to Blue Wallet. I do know they have a really good cold storage system for their main Bitcoin portion of their wallet. It would be nice if they did a Neutrino style wallet, but because it's within the Cash App, I think they're going to have to do it hosted, which is okay though. I think the important, kind of like what Bisq was saying, the important thing at this point is onboarding.
Right.
Even when we go full on mainstream with this, let's say 5 years from now, 10 years, 2 years, whatever it is, custodial solutions will be there, unfortunately, but they will be there. There's still a lot of people out there that won't want to trust themselves with their own money, their own keys, which I don't blame them. They probably shouldn't have them either. But there needs to be that killer app like Cash that makes the user experience great. I'll be honest with you, that's what I use to buy my Satoshis when I need some. It's easy. I can withdraw it right to my Samurai wallet, be done. And I can do it instantly. There's no fees for on-chain transaction. I mean, they make it simple. That's what we need. And that's what will bring. Plus there are all the terminals that allow cash payments. That wouldn't be a bad addition to the network. So,
yeah, I think I agree with that because using these like hosted wallets, it's just so fast and easy, and I just don't see I don't know, people setting up like I just downloaded the Lightning wallet from Lightning Labs, and you still have to sync the blockchain, and it might be 10 minutes, but it's still longer than instant. So I don't know. Maybe there'll be two options. Maybe we'll have like a separate app that has more like user control, and you can kind of open up your own channels and stuff. But I'm guessing it'll probably be hosted.
The one thing we got to be careful about, what in the grand scheme, and this is up for, I'd love to hear your all's opinion. We can't get away from people running full nodes and doing all that. We need that decentralization to keep on growing. So we need people like all of us in this, everybody in the chat, everybody listening, that we need people running full Bitcoin nodes. You need people running a Lightning node. We need that because we don't want all of that power centralizing either. So the hosted wallets are great. That's going to be great for mass onboarding, but we also need those of us that are willing to, risk a little bit for the greater good of the community as well. So that's something we all need to make sure and keep pressing on and pressing and, telling people all day, every day.
And just to piggyback off of that, I think having like an ASIC into something like a Nodl would be awesome, because then you can contribute to the network and also maybe pay for like your bandwidth or something, Hey Max, do you know anything about BetterHash? I was looking into it the other day, and I don't know if it's like a proposal or if it's something that actually exists, but do you know anything about that?
BetterHash is fantastic. There is a great interview with Matt Carollo, the inventor of BetterHash, on the World Crypto Network a couple of 100 blocks back, if you go back in the archives. And BetterHash basically, At the current moment, with Stratum, which is the current mining pool protocol, which is used by most pools, which was also written by Blue Matt, so he's a good guy, and that is the mining pool operator orders all the transactions that he will include into a candidate block. And that's, of course, includes the Coinbase transaction to that mining pool operator and like all the latest block header and whatnot. But after all, the mining pool operator controls what transactions are included in the candidate block. And that candidate block is then distributed to every single peer of that mining pool. And they can check if every transaction is valid, right? They do check consensus themselves, but they can no longer check which or they can no longer enforce which transactions are in their candidate block. And that's not optimal. And so with BetterHash, that is flipped on its head. So the mining pool operator just distributes his address and some information in the block header to all his peers or miners. And then every single individual miner constructs its own individual candidate block based upon the own individual memory pool of that individual full node. And then you do the proof of work on top of that, and you can prove to the mining pool operator that although you are mining on top of your own candidate block, you are still committing the proof of work to the mining pool output. And that is really nice because now every individual miner can choose which transactions to include, and whatever miner is the one that finds valid proof of work in a block that is valid. He will simply publish that to the mining pool, who then will publish it to the network, and the payout will be to the mining pool, who will then distribute the funds to all the peers in the mining pool itself. So Neutrino is great. What are your thoughts on it?
Who? I haven't heard from Bisq in a while.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
You're
Sorry,
good.
I was still having a few issues with my mic. I think it's really interesting. There's actually one comment I do want to bring up that I read a little bit earlier today. That was in a Medium article that Jameson Lott posted. That's related to BetterHash, actually the mining protocol, and he talks about this idea that was proposed, whereby you could theoretically pay miners with Lightning payments. And there was sort of this exploration of if this was achievable, kind of how that might impact the sort of the dynamics of mining. And what was interesting, some of the benefits that they talked about if this were possible, is that you could basically have payouts where you wouldn't necessarily need to have sort of those fees go into a custodial pool. Or you could even potentially combine Lightning payouts to miners with the BetterHash mining protocol, and that would like theoretically reduce the power that mining pools have, and you could potentially improve Bitcoin censorship resistance, or kind of limit some of the centralizing points that I guess do occur with mining. But it's a really interesting thought. I mean, if it would, I think it would be really cool to see, being able to be paid out through the Lightning Network for mining Bitcoin. You also wouldn't have to have several like Dust UTXOs kind of filling space in the blockchain as well if you were able to achieve that. So I don't know. I mean, that's a really interesting idea.
Awesome, BZ, and I would love to hear the opinions of all of you in that. But I would just throw into head, how about the Coinbase transaction is actually a funding transaction of a Lightning Network payment channel? Then you have the ultimate privacy in your payment channel. That is going to be the freshest coin ever, and you can just dedicate a script directly to the Coinbase, or you just make one hop afterwards. But you as a miner can open perfectly clean payment channels and then handle the payment out for your customers. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think personally, I think that would be really incredible. To have that. I think it would also help to sort of streamline the onboarding process in terms of getting sort of inbound liquidity as well. I think that this was something that was being discussed as well, where the services that are providing inbound liquidity to different people's I guess Lightning nodes could be improved, where potentially one day when you I don't know, use any service, like you said, an exchange like a Binance or a Coinbase, and you set up an account and you make sort of, I guess, that initial transaction, inbound capacity could also be provided to your specific node to help you get onboarded and reduce the likelihood of running into routing issues when you're trying to receive payments and things like that. I think that that is a really exciting sort of next step to kind of better improve the network overall.
I would say I'll step in here. I think that's a great the point you all just made. Make sure I'm not on mute. Nope, I'm good. All right, points you all just made are great with the inbound side. In the end, most important thing is making it easy, right? And making it for the new users. For us, it's all about privacy, trying to expand upon that. Those, I think, we're in two different worlds there when we're talking about that. But I think, any way we can mix the two and mesh the two together would be very helpful for the space. Not that the onboarding of some of the new users might not care about some of the privacy features, but implementing them into the technology without them even knowing, that's the important thing, I feel like. And again, I can't stress the privacy side enough. I think that's imperative going forward. I don't necessarily know, and again, this is a debate that could go on for hours and days. Should we do it to the base layer? I don't know. I think the ideas are out there. I know, I want to say I saw, not to go off the Bitcoin talk, but Charlie Lee with Litecoin talking about putting confidential transactions in there. That would be a good test bed to see if it will work as a soft fork. In some of those cases, I don't know what side of the boat I am on the base layer side personally. And again, I probably just went off on a tangent, but I'm extremely, the privacy side is very important going forward.
So, sorry, can you back up a second? You're saying you're not sure of what, like incorporating privacy into the base layer?
Yeah, that's. I still don't know.
Didn't Zcash just have an issue because they have privacy or something like that? Like they, the privacy side of Zcash, they just had a bug or something.
Yeah, there was an inflation bug in Zcash that they just recently disclosed, but they said that they fixed it, allegedly.
But how can you verify that though? Would everybody have to exit from the privacy side of the chain or something?
That's a good question. I think the issue was I guess the issue was that you couldn't necessarily, it would be hard to detect whether or not someone had already exploited that inflation bug, I think, to begin with, depending on whether or not, just because of the nature of the shielded addresses, is my belief. I need to read a little bit more about it, but I think that's what the issue is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that, I'm not against adding privacy to the base layer, but I don't think there's a way to do that unless you hard fork. And I mean, personally, I'm very anti-hard fork, but practically speaking, I think that Bitcoin is, especially now with a lot of people running nodes for things like Lightning, I think it's just not possible. So, I guess you could try, but I just don't think it's actually possible to hard fork it.
Well, there are some thoughts on how we could do, for example, confidential transactions in a soft fork, or something like Schnorr signatures in a soft fork. and with that Merkleized abstract syntax trees. And I mean, soft forks are better than hard forks, but they're still not perfect. And changing the consensus layer in any shape or form is very suboptimal, and it introduces uncertainty and risk. But I do believe that the trade-offs that we can get, let alone with Schnorr, are going to be tremendous. Schnorr is, I think, going to be a net positive in all regards, and it does not introduce any new cryptographic assumptions, as far as I know. But the main benefit is that it allows for key aggregation and threshold signatures. And that, combined with Taproot, provides for tremendous privacy on-chain. Just imagine a Wasabi coin join with in total like an anonymity set of 1,000 or something, but everything is aggregated down to one single signature, so that every coin join transaction is going to be exponentially cheaper than any single signature non-coin join transaction. Right? We can get all that stuff on Bitcoin. Bitcoin already can be today, with something like Wasabi or Pay to Endpoint, be tremendously private. And with some of the technology coming in the future, I have no doubt that we can have really, really private currency with Bitcoin. May it even be on second or third layers.
Well, and that's kind of why I'm kind of hesitant on Mauricio's side at this point on adjusting the base layer, because of things like Wasabi, things like Whirlpool with what Samurai's doing and going to be coming out with. I mean, I don't know if there's a need. Keep it simple, as we add stuff to the base layer, it always adds the unknown of what could happen. Let's keep that base layer simple. Let's add on top of it with coin joint, with what Wasabi's doing, with what Samurai's doing, some of these other technologies, then your multiple layers on top of that. I think that would be going forward the best solution personally, in that side of the debate, I guess.
Max, do you know when Schnorr is supposed to come online?
In 2 weeks.
Oh wow, it's a lot faster. Wait, no, are you joking?
I'm pretty sure everything's 2 weeks.
The official roadmap, decreed by the Blockstream Lizard people, declares that it must be implemented within 2 weeks. No, but seriously, it's quite a way off. I mean, we've seen with SegWit how long changes to consensus take, even when it is non-contentious. How SegWit was a net benefit. Well, other than maybe the block size increase, that might have been most contentious thing. But I think Schnorr signature is even a more clear-cut case. It's a net benefit on so many regards. But that also means that many people that do not want to see Bitcoin succeed will try to make it stop it, right? So there will be pushback, no questions asked. However, there is currently a BIP being worked upon, the Schnorr BIP. It does not yet have an official number, and there's some great work being done by Peter Woolley, by Tim Ruffings, by Jonas Nick, and all the great minds of Bitcoin. And then there's also a implementation already by Peter Woolley. I think so far he's the only one working on it, but there is an implementation in Bitcoin code that is already somewhat peer-reviewed. And then stuff like adapted scripting language like Miniscript, or the Music aggregation script for Schnorr. I mean, working on it, but I would still say, I don't know, like 2020, maybe? I don't know. Maybe earlier, later, well, 2 weeks.
I think you could see it in the Lightning Network. Well, that's actually one aspect of the Lightning Network that I also find really interesting, is that it could also serve kind of as a test ground or a test bed for sort of these new technologies that we may or may not want to introduce into the protocol level of Bitcoin. And, you could definitely implement, or at least I think I remember reading something from Roast Beef from Lightning Labs about introducing Schnorr signatures into the Lightning Network and being able to kind of test out the feasibility and the functionality of it within the Lightning Network to see if it could actually work for Bitcoin at the base layer. But I agree. I think that I don't know. It's going to be tough, but at least I think with these layer 2 and layer 3 solutions, you're gonna if you really want the privacy and if that's what matters most to you, that there are ways in which you can still transact and be private with Bitcoin. There's sort of a solution available for everyone, even if you can't necessarily get something directly into the base layer, which I think is great.
Max, we can't hear you.
Did we lose Max?
Well, I think we're here, the good, the bad, and the ugly, standing here at the Mexican shoot-off. Who's gonna talk next? Who's gonna be it? Well, but I mean, there are of course many really cool things coming, and um, the question really is how much do we need to change on the base layer, and how much is enough already? I think there are a couple more changes that would be great if we have them on the base layer. I think Schnorr signature is one of that because that will include a key aggregation for more efficient coin joins and also something like Taproot for much more efficient scripting languages. And then alone with with Schnorr alone, we can make so much cool stuff with the Lightning Network. But then, especially also when we have SIG hash no input, and we can do something like L2 and other more efficient payment channel options or stuff like watchtowers, then we can catapult this even further. But do you think that we need it, or is Lightning Network as good or good as it is right now with the current consensus limitations of Bitcoin?
So do you need this next? I guess Schnorr is not necessarily needed for neutrino, right? They're separate things, but I think that the most exciting thing for me is that it's not a hard fork. So based on my limited understanding of the technical side of that update, it sounds like it's going to be bringing a lot of benefits, especially for what you described earlier. So I think it's probably a net positive. I don't have anything like against it.
I would say I'm probably on the same boat there. Net positive for the limited change it's doing. Anything to benefit where Lightning could go is great. I would say going further than that, I don't know. And again, that's something none of us know really. There's a lot of proposals out there. One I saw on Twitter was reducing block size, and that's a whole different talk there. But I don't know if we want to go through all this to mess around with the base layer when we're already heading in the right direction. So Max, with what you just said, I think with the Schnorr update being a soft fork and everything, I think that's a net positive. I think that's a simple solution to a greater benefit in my mind. So I would say that's an A-OK thing to do.
Brandon, you're muted.
Can you hear me? Wait.
Yep.
Okay.
Did you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I agree. I personally would like to see Schnorr implemented via soft fork. I think that at this point, given just some of the things that I've heard and in terms of the facts being presented about what it can allow for, I think that it's worth implementing, or at least kind of taking on the risks that come with a soft fork in order to make changes to the base layer. I think that what can be gained or what it allows for is definitely worth taking the risk, in my opinion. So hopefully we'll see it one day.
Yeah, I think just based on what Max was describing earlier, it seems like a very good tool to add for things like Wasabi and more privacy focused considerations.
Yes, and I think it is always somewhat trade-off between complexity and security. And the good thing with Schnorr is that it does not really have any more security assumption than elliptical curve signatures like ECDSA do currently, which we're using in Bitcoin. So we don't really take on any additional risk, but rather we even take out a lot of complexity. And that is quite nice. So because it is rather more simple, you can do something like key aggregation and some other features that are not possible with ECDSA. So that is always nice to reduce complexity and therefore increase the amount of capabilities possible and the privacy with that. That is great. So maybe we could also talk a little bit about the privacy implications of the Lightning Network, right? Because that is also something that is very important. And what I would definitely suggest is that when you are funding your Lightning Network node, make sure that you're using a decent UTXO. So make sure that you have good on-chain privacy before you go off-chain. Okay, that's always a good place to start. And of course, with that, I would highly suggest that you use a Wasabi wallet UTXO. For example, a 0.1 UTXO if you can have 10 million Satoshis in your Lightning Network node. And then you open channels with that. But other than having good on-chain privacy first, what are some privacy best practices specifically for off-chain Lightning Network?
I mean, that's a tough one because it's not very. I mean, I don't know. To me, like my main interaction with Lightning has been on my phone, and I'm not too familiar with how to make that environment, quote unquote, like private. So, I don't know what the implications are, but maybe Crypto Pura Vida can chime in on this, and if he knows. But I'm guessing that if you're not using kind of like the same privacy tools that you would use on a computer, you're a little bit exposed when you're using like a wallet on your phone.
From a Lightning network, and Max, you'll obviously correct me if I'm wrong here, but with Lightning network, the important, let me make sure I'm not muted here. No, okay. The only people that know of a transaction, and let's assume Tor's not involved. Let's assume somebody brand new is getting into this. They hooked up their CAS or their Nodl node, and they're just going in. When somebody opens a channel, you're exposing an IP address, you're exposing a channel ID. So right off the bat, you're losing a little privacy there. Again, we're at the very beginning stages of this, so that's going to be an ever evolving aspect of the network. But right off the bat, we're exposing IP addresses and a channel ID. Within the network, it's similar to how Tor works with onion routing. The only people that know of a transaction happening are the one prior and the one after yours. And let's say there's 10 other hops past your transact. Well, let's say Mauricio needs to send Bisq, 1 Bitcoin. Well, you can't use 1 Bitcoin, 10,000 Satoshis. I'm the middleman. It goes through myself, goes through Max, goes through Curly. The only connection there, from my standpoint, I would know that it came from Mauricio, but Curly and Max and Bisq, well, Bisq would know because they probably talked and decided to get the Satoshis. But if they didn't talk, they wouldn't. Nobody past me would know it came from through Mauricio. So naturally, Lightning Network has that privacy, the onion, similar to onion routing within itself. But with us exposing our IP addresses, that's where we lack the privacy. And again, I'm brand new to the Tor side of it. I just, on one of my nodes, just implemented Tor throughout my one of my Lightning nodes. Got my onion address. Everything's working fine. That's great. But again, I don't know the implications there because I'm just getting into that side of it. Max, you might have a little bit better understanding on that side. I know Nodl, it's rolling out Tor soon, but I don't think it's ready. But that'll be a plug and play, point and go Tor wrapped node right there.
Well, I hope so. And right now it is somewhat implemented. So currently, finally, with the latest update to version 0.05 of the Nodl firmware, you can activate the in-house LND Tor option, so that all the all the LND communication within the Lightning Network is Tor onion routed, and that's somewhat useful, but we're still not 100% there. And especially because with this setup, you can not have Tor and port forwarding at the same time. So it is somewhat a pain in the ass to connect both over Tor and then still have automatic port forwarding to connect to other peers. So it's not yet optimal. What K2Miner is working on currently is let's say, a higher up implementation of Tor, so that all the Nodl communication will be done over Tor and on a higher level, so that it's not just LND but also Bitcoin D and BTC Pay and all this other stuff. So we're gonna get there. Hopefully, it's still very much a work in progress. We have so much more to improve, but already I think we're pretty good.
So is Bitcoin D on the Nodl not running behind Tor as of yet? Did I understand that right?
I'm not 100% yet certain what it is at this moment, as there are many updates coming, but
Got it.
I don't think it is, but it is the plan to be very soon.
Got it. Cool.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. I love it.
Hey, what's Curly playing there?
What?
On his little avatar.
Oh,
Looks like
yes,
you're
look
doing
at
something.
this. Okay, that is actually fantastic. Okay, that is good propaganda. Good on you, Curly. That's good shilling. That is a fantastic little game. That is a lot of fun. So if you have too many Satoshis, right, and if you want to spend them over Lightning Network, there are many places to do so. And one of the good places is lightninghood.com/games/Space Invaders, where you can pay, how much is it, 500 Satoshis?
Yeah,
and then you can play a round of Space Invader.
I don't know.
There's a leaderboard and everything. So what's up with that? How does that work?
So the game itself was actually a GitHub poll we found. Somebody just, I don't even know if, I'll be honest with you, the three of us, we don't code. Very little bit, next to nothing. So we actually partnered up with the gentleman that created Cryptode. Let me see if I can find it here.
Pseudo Zach.
He did Cryptode and offers, I'll screen share. Let's see here. Can you all see? Let me know if you see this. So he offers 3-card Monty. You can text over Lightning Network, Duck Hunt over Lightning. So we got working with him. His background is building games and different things along those lines. So he helped us build and implement Lightning into that, into Space Invaders. And we got some more stuff coming, which will be exciting. Everybody will love. And, as much as we hate to let go of some Satoshis, it's fun to play these old school arcade games, man. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's some of these things are addicting. So, but he's done a great job. I would definitely recommend going to his website, crypto.com. You can do a little gambling or just play duck hunt. You always have the chance to win your Satoshis back, of course. But yeah, so he helped us build that, which has been really neat. Just in addition to help drive some people to the site to not just spend, but to, again, learn. It's all about learning. So that's kind of the game for it. Name of the game.
But seriously, how dare you? That's so anti-Bitcoiner. You're decreasing the time, you're increasing the time preference now. We're back to fiat culture here with gaming and wasting away money at gambling. That's no good. How dare you?
There, I would agree with you.
No, and it's not just you, right? There's so many amazing Lightning games out there. It's crazy, like the Donner Labs and Lightning Koala with chess, and the Penguin Shooter. There's so many cool games. What are your thoughts on Lightning gaming in general?
As much as I hate to let go of Satoshis, I'm not going to lie. The thing I play the most next to Space Invaders is I love the roulette, man. I'm a roulette fan. I love playing that. It's just a fun little thing. But I think games help show the simplicity and not the use case, but the use case of Lightning Network. How simple it is to, even if it's one Satoshi, to pay for something. I mean, we're sending. How easy is it going to be to send a penny to someone? A USD penny. I mean, you gotta hand it to them. I mean, we're throwing this stuff over the internet. It's mind blowing, but it's showing what's possible out there, which is cool.
Speaking of throwing things on the internet, what's the status of the Lightning Trust chain? Is it still going?
Yeah,
I think Jack Mallers has it right now. That's the last I remember seeing about it. But just to follow up with Pura Vida, I think I'm super excited for gaming with the Lightning Network. I think that's going to be a huge use case. And particularly, I think with things like Twitch, I think that, the ability, I think there may or may not be a way to do this, but I just imagine where you take a platform like Twitch and you're able to send streamers payments or donations via the Lightning Network. I think that there will be all kinds of ways in which people that play games will be able to more easily monetize. And I think that there will be a lot more interesting ways in which those same players will be able to engage kind of their viewers and their fans a little bit more. And specifically, like with Donner Dungeon, what I thought was really cool is that people watching a user playing the game can pay to have waves appear or pay to have enemies appear for the person that's playing the game to kill, which I think is a really interesting use case where you could imagine, some big Twitch streamer, being able to make tons of money or being able to really come up with these interesting ways in which he can engage with his fans by having them pay to put obstacles or new challenges in front of him. I also think that it'll be huge for kind of gambling as it relates to video game gambling, where you might be able to incentivize a player to say, I think it's like skill-based gambling for video games, where you could imagine a player plays a game, they have some level of proficiency at the game, and then they can make bets using like Bitcoin Lightning Network or a level that maybe they get a 2-to-1 payout or a 3-to-1 payout that's all based upon their ability at playing that particular game. And something like that might be possible with using like Bitcoin's Lightning Network or micropayments or things like that. So I don't know. I'm really excited for it, and I think there's a lot of cool and interesting things being currently worked on.
Very cool.
Max, what's your take?
Oh, I'm in love with the Lightning Network games because I think they show best what Bitcoin truly is possible with. Because it is all digital cyberspace interaction. It is not really meat space interactive, and that's why it works so well. Because that's what Bitcoin is made for: digital Libra sound money, and that I think that's where we see the power of Bitcoin first. Not the only place, but I think we'll see it first and most strongly. And especially, look, I'm so looking forward to seeing sound market economies emerge out of games, especially massive open online games. And I kind of see this future of massively like huge open source online games where everyone has its own character, and there is a free exchange between each of these identities in cyberspace. Right, just like, for example, here now Curly or Beezy are different identities, similar to this, but in game, so to speak. But because we have Bitcoin as a sound money for the internet, we can have true economic interaction here in this cyberspace gaming environment. And I think that's beautiful to see something like Skyrim, but with sound money, or something like Grand Theft Auto, but with sound money. And we've seen the last 30 years gaming evolve, and it's been quite interesting to behold, but it was all in fiat la la land. And now we have Bitcoin sound money. And I'm so interested to see how the internet in general, but gaming specifically, evolves to adapt to this new sound monetary standard. What are your thoughts on this?
I personally think I personally am really excited for it because I think you'll be able to have you could potentially have these really amazing in-game economies or market economies. Like for instance, like a GTA Online, where if you imagine that you use Bitcoin as sort of the in-game currency to pay for things, it just becomes a much more seamless user experience. Where I think it would even be cool where you could have, say, like the I think it's Donner Dungeon or the other game where you shoot the sheep, but having the invoices built into the game where you can like make a quick microtransaction in order to like to get a car or some item that you can use in the game, I think is really awesome. And I think that, that could be a really huge and unique use case. So I think that you'll see in the future really a lot more immersive in-game economies going forward, and that's something that I think is much needed.
I mean, look at what Fortnite. I think we were talking about that the other day. I mean, look at what Fortnite is doing. From an economic standpoint, what did we say they brought in $300 million in people just using in-game purchases? Am I accurate with that? I think is what we were talking about.
Yeah, I think so. With like skins and like having your player do different emotes, like dance moves or whatever. But there's a huge market for that.
And as technology grows and builds, whether it be virtual reality and whatever's coming down the line, Bitcoin is there, Lightning Network is there to be that use case of purchases inside that technology. Instant transaction, censorship resistance that you need. People don't even need to think they're spending it; it's just happening, and the company's getting their money right. I mean, that's going to be a game changer. And I was just looking the whole lightning torch thing. We were talking about it a few minutes or a little bit ago or a few minutes ago. I was just looking and it struck me, Jack Dorsey's comment after he got the torch, or, somewhere involved there. I mean, here's a quote from him. Bitcoin is resilient. Bitcoin is principled. Bitcoin is native to internet ideals. And that is a great brand, and it's a great brand. But the native to internet ideals, I mean, that struck me. I mean, we're involved in the internet, the money of the internet right now, and the internet isn't going away; it's growing, and that's the important thing. And wrapping our heads around it from here on and teaching people, why are we transacting in dollar bills or whatever. That'll be going away down the road. My kids aren't going to see dollars, and we just have to be smart about how we implement it so we know who's controlling it and all that. So and again, I took it off on a tangent, but there you go.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one last thing that I would add is I think that as it relates to Bitcoin and gaming, or Lightning Network and gaming, I think that the most interesting use case could be with MMORPGs. So kind of these massive online games where everyone is able to kind of play together, like a World of Warcraft or a RuneScape, if you're familiar at all. But I personally was into RuneScape, and I always think of the example of swapping RuneScape gold, which was the in-game currency, for something like Bitcoin. So that as you play this game and you're playing with other people and you do certain quests, or you're able to get certain items, all of the in-game items, whether it be skins, armor, or weapons, whatever it is now priced in Bitcoin and now has real world value. It actually means something. And what that can mean for players of the game is that they might be able to make maybe an honest living or a real living playing the game. And that to me is just like really exciting. Like I think back to like all the time I spent playing like RuneScape when I was a kid, and if I could have actually had something to show for it, like some of the items and gears I had, I could have sold that or exchanged it for actual Bitcoin to, I don't know, pay rent or like, buy different things or whatever it is. But I think that that's something that is now actually possible and will become more evident as time goes on. And that's something that I'm personally really excited for.
I'd be curious what your all's input on, we're a consumer-driven economy here in the States. I mean, around the world. I mean, that's unfortunately the way it is to keep up with all this inflation and all. But what's your all's take on, an attention-driven economy, kind of to tie in with what Bisq was just saying? I mean, the people playing these games and, ads pop up and, you're getting paid to watch these ads essentially in Satoshis. I mean, is that the future of a future driver of part of our economy? Is attention driven? I mean, are we going to see the, holograms of, you walking by a store and you're walking in some, I don't know, Lucky Jeans or whatever, and a hologram right next to you? I mean, is that the future? I mean, Bitcoin would allow for that. Lightning Network would allow for that. But I mean, is that where we're going?
So this is Mauricio. I guess I'll take a crack at that. I don't know necessarily if that's where we're going, because I think that Bitcoin, and especially like something like Lightning that lets you do, streaming money and microtransactions, I think that's ultimately going to help disintermediate a lot of these kind of services that rely on marketing. And you're going to see a lot more like B2B and person-person kind of transactions. So, if you build a game, maybe you're getting more compensation directly from the people playing. And if you build like an ecosystem that's like open source, then no one's really collecting rent. So the participants are kind of providing the economy to that. And if that's the setup, you don't necessarily need a lot of ads because there's no overhead. So if you don't have expenses because you're not running a business, then you don't need to offset those with ads because you're providing your service for free. So You know, I mean, I'm sure it's not going to go away, but I don't think that's necessarily like the future for everything.
Right. I would agree with that too. I think one thing that could be interesting is, I do think that we're becoming more of an attention-driven economy, but I do think what could be interesting as it relates to the disintermediation of media companies is having them pay you to watch their ads instead, because I think like now, I think everyone hates ads. I think that the whole concept of if I could make a microtransaction to not have to watch an ad, I would do it every single time. I just cannot stand ads. But I think that with more kind of B2B and peer-to-peer type interactions occurring, especially as it relates to content curation and things like blogs, things like streaming, especially if you create platforms in which um, like it isn't really necessary to incorporate ads, because things like Twitch streamers do incorporate ads, but if you're able to make enough money off donations where you don't need to do that, so that you can allow more users to either view you or subscribe to your content in some other way, then you can kind of eliminate the need for it. And I think that going forward, you will see it become tougher and tougher for media companies and advertisers to get the attention of people. And therefore, I think they're going to have to find some other incentive to get people to actually want to view their content, which could be paying people paying people microtransactions or a few satoshis or something like that in order to view their content.
Yeah,
Well,
and also just
I think it's interesting here in twofold ways, because on the one hand we have the technological argument, right? That with credit cards you simply cannot make any payment smaller than let's say 3, 4, 5 euros or dollars. That's a technical limitation. And with Bitcoin on chain, we have some similar technical limitations, right? It's rather difficult to make smaller transactions, especially when fees are high, right? And you have to pay directly for block space. But then with Lightning Network, on the other hand, we are no longer tied to this. I mean, look at this. For example, right here, that's the Lightninghood Tiffany. I'm going to send them a little payment here of, let's say, then 1 Satoshi. So 1 little Satoshi on Jewel, and should be done within a couple seconds. And we can do that done with no cost. So that was like 1 Satoshi in payment. And it's super cheap and it's super convenient. So we have micropayments now super easily with Bitcoin based on a sound monetary standard. So this technical limitation is no longer here. However, on the other hand, it does mean that we still have the, let's say, economic or incentive issue, because I do believe that we have a lot of this advertising and attention grabbing because we live in a weak economy with a weak monetary standard. And I would argue that the cultural effects of such a weak inflationary fiat are so long lasting and deep that they cause a lot of the consequences or manifestations that we now see with this ad culture. And Bitcoin, I do believe, will solve this, not just because of the technical solution, but also because of the sound monetary and cultural effects level. So when we all have a Bitcoin standard and when we adjust our time preference in accordance to this Libra money, then I hope that we will no longer care too much about these short-term attention-seeking media outlets, these, let's say, addictive information sources, but rather try to build something that is long-lasting and actually worthwhile to accumulate on the information side. What are your thoughts?
Well, so Max, a third leg to what you were just describing. So you were talking about the technology side of it and also like the hard money side of it. But really, it's also the relationship side of it, because one of the reasons you can't use necessarily Visa or something, you have to use Visa, and you have to, whenever you use it, you have to sign up. You can't like pay for something without some sort of a layer of a relationship because of like chargebacks and stuff like that. So if you go and you buy something, you know, most companies are going to want you to subscribe. They're not going to just like offer something like Y'all's where I go and buy like an article. if I go to the Wall Street Journal or any newspaper, like there's no option for that. And, you know, is that really more like technically a limitation, or is it just because, you know, there's no such thing as like digital cash, right? So I think that something like Lightning is going to be, you're going to not have to have a relationship with these kind of online services, and it'll make buying like an article from a newspaper or paying like on the spot to get rid of an ad a lot more easier, because, you know, the alternative is to subscribe to get rid of that ad, which is a lot more involved. But now with like Lightning, you don't have to have that kind of relationship layer to make these ads go away.
So to talk about the sound money side and, you know, Bitcoin standard, the hard part is going to be adjusting what people have been taught for the last 100+ years. You know, we're the way everybody had been brought up and, you know, grew up, you know, from a Gen X, Gen Y, whatever it is. You know, we're again a consumer-driven Keynesian style economy where spending is how you keep the economy going. You don't need to save because we're going to inflate your money away. That people don't understand that concept, unfortunately, and that's something from an educational standpoint has to be adjusted. I think our space does a great job at starting that, but you know, we all need to be active in promoting that, which everybody is. Once that cycle starts flowing the other direction, you know, from a sound money standpoint, time is money. You know, everything you do, you know, is a cost to you. So you have to account for that. So you're not just wasting your time out there anymore. And that's what happens nowadays a lot, unfortunately. So having Bitcoin and having the Lightning Network and having the monetary principles behind it active and flowing through your head and through people's heads, it's a tough change, but once it happens, it's really going to change the way we all interact with each other, I think. And again, that attention-based society will probably slowly, well, hopefully not slowly, but it'll go away, and it'll, you know, we're gonna get paid for the time we spend, and vice versa. So.
You're muted if you're trying to say something.
No, I mean, I agree with those points. I didn't really have too much to add there.
Well, okay, then maybe let's move on to another area of topic, and maybe something that we already started out on to elaborate, and that would be liquidity management, right? And so we already said that you've built up this liquidity pool to have local peers, right? Friends that you actually know, right? To have this semi-trust net, and to build this up, and to, you know, be connected, well connected to your peers. And I think that's one great solution to scale up your Lightning Network node. But there are other opportunities. So, for example, what are your thoughts on these circular channel setups? So, for example, that Bisq opens a channel to Curly Dreams, and Curly Dreams opens one to Pura Vida, and Pura Vida to Mauritius, and Mauritius to me, and then I open one to Bisq. And then we would be all connected in this one giant circle, and we would have all rather decent, good liquidity among us and among all the peers of our peers. So that is quite nice. What are your thoughts on such cyclical channels?
Well, just to take a step back on what you said earlier about like the trust side, because I know some people listening might like, you know, instantly react and say, oh, you know, this is like a trust layer or whatever. But you know, the beauty of having a second layer is that even if there is like more of a peer-to-peer relationship with like someone in like a Lightning Network pool, like the one we have, the trust is more important on the base layer. the consensus layer. So, just because you're using additional layers or other networks, like even like the Liquid network or whatever that's building on top of Bitcoin, doesn't sacrifice the core principles or anything like the trust layer or anything like that. So I think that's something that's like important to point out. But just to follow up with what you were saying, I think the jury might still be out on the best way to manage kind of like the liquidity for your channels. And I know that the new technology coming online is going to help with alleviating some of like these pressure points. So it's going to change again once we have the ability to route, move through more than one channel at a time, or open and close new channels on like one transaction and stuff like that. But for right now, I think having a loop like the one you described is kind of the lazy way to make sure that you're doing some sort of channel balancing, because as like payments get routed, if they can't go in one direction, and eventually they'll have to go in the other direction, so it'll bring money back through the loop. So I think at least that's like the theory. So I think there is some sense in trying to connect into some sort of a loop, and then obviously you have to like connect into the main network too, but it should help with some of the channel balancing issues versus just having connections to like random nodes. But I haven't really done an analysis on that, so I can't be sure. But it just seems like that would be the case.
So my initial thought would be, when we're talking from the loop you just described, between the five of us, that would work fine. But again, those at this point, the way, depending on how it was structured, that's still a one-way directional loop. The way LND or Lightning Network in general is set up at this point, when you open a channel, it's still a one-sided channel, so you need to balance it one way or another. Meaning, if I'm, let's say Bisq opened one to Curly, who opened one to Mauricio, who opened one to me, and me to Max. Those funds, if Bisq wanted to send to Max, it has to go that direction. But if Max wanted to send to Bisq, it couldn't happen until it went the other direction. First,
but couldn't it just go through the other end of the loop? Because we're all connected.
Connecting all the way around. So yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. I see what you're saying.
And plus, like, I think Max was also alluding to the fact that we all have our own connections. So it's kind of like building a hub for that
loop between five, creating, and then from there, I'm assuming we might have one of us would have a bit refill or y'alls,
right?
Forth. So creating that. Okay, I see what you're saying. I got you. Yeah, I mean, that's from a liquidity pool. I mean, granted, I guess that's in the end what we essentially kind of all created and joined up. We're our own little funky looking loop, I'm sure. So which again helps with liquidity in all directions. I'm really excited, for the atomic multipath, or AMPS. I think it's atomic multipath. Multipath payments. I don't know when that's going to get implemented. I think that's going to be really neat. A neat implementation to add to the network. I don't know if there's a timeline on that or not yet. Does anybody know off the top? I know we talked about it a few months ago, but nothing's happened yet.
Well, in 2 weeks, of course.
Man, I love it. Got to set the clock.
Well, yes, and I think especially the major upgrades coming are on one side dual funding, so that both parties can fund the opening transaction, and I think that's going to be interesting because you will have a well-balanced individual payment channel within just one transaction immediately. And that's cool and all, but I don't think that it's so much of a big deal, because when, let's say, when you have one channel with outbound liquidity, where you still have all of the balance. And so you have funded this channel and you have 1 billion Satoshis and your counterparty has none in there whatsoever. Then this is, of course, not a well-balanced channel itself. But then when you have another channel where you have inbound capacity, so that another peer has opened a channel to you, so that that outside peer still has all the channel balance or capacity, then all of a sudden, your node itself, your entire Lightning node, with both the incoming and the outgoing channels, is well balanced, and you can be a good peer in the network routing. And of course, it would be better to have both or all the individual channels well balanced as well. I do believe that we can manage that without. So I don't think that the dual funding is going to be too important, but I do think that atomic multipath payments are going to be gigantic and very, very important.
So I think that the dual funding is going to be awesome for people that want to use like something like autopilot, because one of the reasons that I'm more inclined to using like our Lightning Network pool versus just the autopilot is because of that risk that you're paying for the opening fee and the closing fee, and the other side of the autopilot can kind of just close the channel and, you know, thank you for the liquidity. Yep. So, but if it's dual funded, then it's you know, it would make me think that the autopilot feature will be more attractive.
So that's what I was just about to ask. Will they be implementing the dual funding portion to an autopilot channel, or is that going to be between peers at that point? Is that going to be a custom channel, for instance?
I'm not sure, but I feel like it would make the most sense for autopilot. But I mean, ideally, I guess you could have it for both custom and autopilot.
Yeah, if it was for autopilot, I'm with you know, Mauricio there. I think that would make it much more attractive. I'll be honest with you. I personally do not use autopilot, just for the fact of I don't want to pay those fees and then have that channel dropped intentionally. So I open all custom channels. But if that were to come about where it's effective in autopilot, that would open some avenues for you know, for me personally using autopilot, and then having a balanced channel on top of that, it would be phenomenal.
Yeah, good points. And maybe though one little thing where I'm just thinking right now is that what I think is currently happening quite a lot is that two peers are going to open two individual payment channels with two on-chain transactions to each other, so that one party is going to open the one side to the other party. So Alice is going to fund one channel to Bob, and Bob is going to fund one different channel to Alice. And that takes, of course, twice as much block space and twice as much on-chain fees. And I don't even think that it's that good thinking about it, because let's assume that only Alice is funding the payment channel, and she will fund it with 1 million Satoshis. Then yes, for the first couple for the first instance, only Alice can use this payment channel to send payments, and Bob can only receive payments. It cannot be the other way around. So Alice cannot receive anything, and Bob cannot send anything, because it's a lopsided payment channel. However, then as soon as they start making actual payments, as soon as Alice starts making payments to Bob or routing payments through this channel, then this situation shifts again. And then as soon as you make some transactions, both parties can use this payment channel in both directions. So it's not that current day payment channels are one directional. They are bidirectional. They can send in both directions. And after a couple payments, they are completely capable of doing that. So I actually think that it would be better to spread out your funding across different peers, and do not open two individual uniquely directed channels with the same node. But I'm not sure if that is an accurate advice. What are your thoughts on this? Should people do that?
It's actually a good point. I didn't even think about the dual funding channel with the the on-chain transactions on both sides. Um, it puts skin in the game for both people. That's the benefit. But again, if you look at it, it's a waste of satoshis in a way as well.
And the skin in the game is only in the very beginning.
You're
right?
correct. Yeah. And
Well,
that's
so
interesting.
one other thing that's kind of I don't know if this is technically correct or not, but if you're both funding it, you have, I'm assuming, a little bit more control over how much you want to use for funding. I thought one of the risks in general is that if somebody doesn't fund a channel enough, then when you go to close it in the future, like it might not be enough to pay for the fee.
On-chain fees. Yeah.
So if you're relying only on people paying for the transaction fee and you don't have any kind of like say in it, and you have someone open the inbound channel to you, but then all the money came over to your side of the channel. If you wanted to close that channel and you can't, then that's a problem too, you know?
It's a good point.
I think that limit is at 1% or even below that, and that is quote unquote hard coded in the L&D client. Of course, you can change that, but I mean that is more a denial of service and a uh, a penalty revocation transaction game theoretical mechanism. Because if you do not have any funds in the payment channel, then you do not have any costs to um, uh, to close with an old channel state. So when Bob has 0 satoshis on his side, then he could close with an old channel state where he still has 100 satoshis, and that would be wrong. But Alice could not punish him because in the current most correct state, Bob already has 0, so Alice cannot go negative. That's impossible.
Yeah.
And that is the game theoretical aspect why you need to have some satoshis retaining, which I think, again, I think 1% might be low.
Yeah, I meant more like the fee that you pay to open the channel, and then also the fee that's kind of retained to close it in the future. You know, if you're paying part of that fee, then I guess you have more control over how much you put in, so that if the other side doesn't put in that much, you always have like a guarantee that you put enough to pay for the miner to like process the on-chain transaction in the future.
It'll be interesting I think it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out as a whole when it gets implemented. I'm curious in both directions to see game theory behind it. Right now people still ask, what's the best way to manage your channels? How much should I put in? That's a tough, I mean, personally, I'd rather have less amount of larger channels than many small channels, because, and especially until the amps get implemented, I mean, you're limiting yourself to what you can ship back and forth through channels that way. So I've always erred on the side of less and more than the opposite.
Yep, I would agree with that. I also would just add to that it is a really tough kind of situation to go about. And one thing that I've done a few times, and it's kind of like breaking the rules, because in a way, because you really have to trust the other person, but I'll open a channel to someone, and then to balance the channel, I'll send half of the amount. So if I open like a 0.01 BTC channel, I'll send 0.005 over to the other side to balance the channel, and then have that person send me that amount of Bitcoin back on chain to kind of refund myself. But at the same time, you have to have high trust that that person isn't going to just, take your money. So it's not something that I would recommend for anyone to do, but I've done it with like close friends or people that I know well. But it's tough, especially at this current point in time.
Another reason why you can use a hosted wallet and just not worry about it.
Not your coins, Mauricio. Come on, man.
Hey, just think of it as like a physical wallet. You know,
Yeah.
don't put more than like $10 in the.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes and no. I do think that custodial wallets make somewhat more sense for Lightning than they do for on-chain. But still, right? Not your keys, not your coins, and you have to be really careful. And I would much more prefer, especially for being mobile. And if you are on the go, I would much rather have something like the Eclair wallet from Async. Which is a non-custodial wallet. You actually have your keys, but it's an SPV wallet, and not even Neutrino. I think it's still Bloom filters. But the cool thing is that because it's a send-only wallet, nobody can steal from you, and therefore you don't need to run a full node. And that's why it can be a really good non-custodial mobile client. I love this wallet. I've been using it for a long, long time as my secondary Lightning wallet in conjunction with my main wallet. But then I also do have a tip in me. And I do have an open node, right? So you can still have custodial wallets on top, but just make sure that you know that you are not in control of your money here, and that is not optimal.
Right.
But
yeah, I think that like I think that these solutions are great for us, but I think the community has it right where they need to come up with the use case that for that individual in the world that doesn't have access to anything other than this. And for those people, it has to be non-custodial because they're not going to be putting like $10 in there. They're going to be putting like everything they have. So we definitely have to have a functional, light, footprint, fully non-custodial option for those people in like countries around the world that just don't have an alternative. And that otherwise they would have to rely completely on like these custodial solutions, and that's not good. Did we lose Max?
We might have.
No,
I guess this is the part of the show
waiting.
that's shilling. Oh, he's back. Never mind.
Actually, I know you made a comment of the Eclair wallet, the async. I know, if I'm not mistaken, a week or so ago, or I know they've been talking about releasing bi-directional access with that wallet. You looking forward to that, I would assume? I used it. I do like the wallet. It works really nice. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the bi-directional access?
What exactly do you mean? I'm not quite sure.
Incoming and outgoing. They're gonna, right now you can only send. Well, they're gonna let you use it to receive here coming shortly. I know they made an announcement not too long ago.
Oh, yes, right. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think they are also working on the Neutrino implementation. And that is outstanding because Neutrino is, in pretty much all regards, a better SPV light client than Bloom filters. Inverted Golden Rice filters, much more privacy preserving, much more efficient, and more secure overall, I would argue. It's still not as good as running your own full node, but when you have to run a light client, and again, there are many merits for that where you want to run a light client, then Neutrino is in all regards better. So Wasabi wallet is already running Neutrino on mainnet, so that is out there, but it's not yet as efficient enough so that it can be supported on mobile. So that's kind of a bummer. Needs to be worked out a bit more. Then we have the Lightning Labs publishing their Lightning wallet on mobile on testnet, running with Neutrino. That is amazing. And again, now with Async, their Eclair wallet, send and receive. I do believe that this is Neutrino as well. So that is perfect. We really need that. And again, it's trade-offs, but in addition to running a full node, a light client is perfect. And we need to be as secure and as efficient as possible with all these tools.
I do want to make sure before we end that we definitely talk about, I know we had somebody ask us about Zigzag. So we were talking about our channels. How do you manage your channels? When all the liquidity gets to be in one direction and you need some inbound liquidity, or you need to top up a channel. Right now, you can't just deposit more Bitcoin into an existing channel. You have to close down that channel and reopen a new one. But with some products out there, or exchanges, one specifically zigzag.io, really cool exchange. You can actually send, if you want to top up a Lightning Network wallet, if you want to top up one of your Lightning wallets, you can actually send the exchange on-chain Bitcoin, looks like Ethereum, Litecoin, and Dash, and they'll do the exchange, and you basically send the on-chain transaction to them. You put in your, similar to how say it, but how Shapeshift and some of these others worked. You put your Lightning Network invoice for the amount it tells you, and they will send you you give them an on-chain transaction, they'll send you Bitcoin via Lightning into that address, which will help rebalance that channel. So that's a really cool service. You can use it in the opposite direction too. If you want to take some out of your channel and put it on chain, you can do that. So I think that's a really neat service. I know Alex Bosworth with y'all has the Unchained, similar concept there, or not Unchained. I don't remember what, he's got a similar concept where you can rebalance. So just wanted to see your all's take.
Is that submarine swaps, or is that something different?
Yeah, submarine swaps is what would be like Zigzag. That was my fault. I was thinking of the blog thing that he did.
Yeah, I think submarine swaps is only one direction. So I think that you can send on chain and receive Lightning. I don't think you can do the other way around. So I think that's like one thing that's kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily missing, but something that is, once it's here, it'll be a lot better, is more integration with exchanges so that you can exit Lightning without necessarily running like a full node yourself and closing channels. And that should help with some rebalancing too, because then you can just open a channel. If you have your node, you can just open a channel into the network and all the liquidity will be on your end of the channel. But then if you send Lightning payment to one of these exchanges and then withdraw like on chain, then you're basically just pushing the liquidity to like the other end of your channel. So now you'll have more inbound without having to close, but without having to pay like a service or something to open a channel to you. Because you don't have to necessarily open a channel to that exchange. You can open a channel to like a node you want to be connected to for like a longer period of time. Instead of using something like the Thor service, which, you know, they open a channel to your node, but then they only guarantee it for like, 30 days or something like that. And then they could potentially close it.
Yep, that's accurate.
I think this is a fantastic opportunity to balance out channels. And I mean, there are different ways of doing it, right? But ultimately, there's no difference between pushing out liquidity of an existing channel or making a new on-chain funding transaction that is being funded with the outside peer opening the channel to your own node. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. You are going to have receiving liquidity, inbound liquidity anyhow. And sending to other peers is a great way of doing that. So you need to spend your Satoshis. Either you buy a bunch of stickers. You could do that, of course. Stickers are always nice. Or, of course, you send it to yourself. So what you can either do is something that we talked about earlier, is build up these cyclical payment channels so that you are connected to a peer that is connected to you. And then you can send to yourself through all these payment channels, and then balance the individual channels this way. Or you do it over a custodial wallet. So for example, you could send it to a Tip and Me, as we have right here, or to OpenNode, and then send a bunch of money and then request it back. But make sure that the request is across a different payment channel. That would be another only second layer solution. So you would not have any on-chain footprint. Or then, of course, I think the last opportunity that we have here would be to use a submarine swap. So to pay something with Lightning and then hopefully atomically, so that nobody can steal from you. Make sure that you get the on-chain funding. And then with the on-chain money, you can open the next payment channel for, again, having then inbound liquidity. And you could do this potentially 100 times, right? Doesn't really matter. All you have are the fees, both for the exchange service and the on-chain fees.
Yeah, I would say those are some really good points there. Again, it's at this point, it's trying to, utilize all the services that are out there, figuring out which ones are going to work and which ones aren't, and, improve upon them. And again, I think it'll get easier as time goes. We're in the very beginning of this. So I think, all these options are nice for all of us to play around with and see how it works to balance channels and take in and out of Lightning Network for on-chain transactions to, test the waters. And then from there, what we do is tell the developers or those that are making it with the hard parts, just like we do with these new Lightning nodes that came out. We're testing the waters for people, and then it gets approved upon, and then from there it flies. So
yes, very much agreed. And Piers, we've talked about a bunch of cool stuff, and we really have. And thank you very much for joining us. And maybe let's now start with kind of like the exit question summarization round. So let's start with you, Brandon.
Everybody, I'm by myself.
Sorry, what? Okay, so Coinbase, could you maybe summarize a little bit if there anything that you still want to bring up, or any shilling that you still want to have to do?
Well, I think we had a great conversation. I think we covered a lot of ground, got to talk about a lot of interesting topics. I guess as it relates to any shilling, I guess go check out Lightninghood. I hope, go subscribe to Crypto World Network. Check out the videos. You do some awesome videos diving into the technical details with the Lightning Network. Those are great videos for anyone listening that wants to learn more about the Lightning Network. Go check those out. Those are an awesome resource to learn more. Also, I guess a big shout out to Zach for helping us with the Space Invaders game. That's been awesome. But yeah, really enjoyed the talk, and thank you so much for having us on.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you very much for joining. And same opportunity out to you, Mauricio. Any last words from you? Anything that we still want to talk about?
Well, just to echo some of the comments from Bisq, I want to thank you again for hosting us today. And it's definitely awesome. I know, at least for me and for a couple of other guys, this is like our first YouTube experience. So it's been a lot of fun. And I guess the only thing I wanted to show a little bit is if you're local to DC, Bisq and I are trying to put together a meetup on the 20th, kind of like Bitcoin and Lightning focused. And we're still working out the details, but it looks like we're going to have Desiree Dickerson and also Josh, who on Twitter is Carpe Noctem. He's going to be coming and talking the little roundtable kind of discussion at the meetup. Along with Desiree, we're going to be talking about Lightning, and just trying to grow the local community a little bit more. So if you're in the area, we haven't really tweeted it out or anything yet. So if you're interested, just keep an eye out on my Twitter, and I'll post it there. And or you can just send me, my DMs are open, so you can send me a message and let me know that you're interested. I'll let you know when we finalize the details, but that's coming up soon. And I guess the only other thing is, smash that like button, right? I have to say that.
Well, that's awesome, Sam. Thank you very much. And Pura Vida, same goes out to you. Any last words? And now is the chance.
Yeah. Well, first off, Max, thanks for what you do, man. Because without guys with the YouTube channels and out there on a daily basis, doing what you're doing, pumping the good word, the information doesn't get out there. So we appreciate you having us on, all of us. It's a needed thing in the space right now to just air out questions, tech questions. Let's learn from each other. It's the important thing. From a shilling standpoint, the only thing I can really do is say check out lightninghood.com. Again, we're a resource page. We're not the end all be all. We want to be, but we aren't yet. Any suggestions, shoot them over to us on Twitter or our Telegram chat. Other than that, we appreciate everything. Thank you. Check out the website. And I think Curly Dream is texting me here. He's thanking everybody as well. So thank you very much.
Well, that is very much awesome. So again, thank you all for joining. That is great. We had a great conversation, and maybe to finish it up. Please, Piers, follow all these amazing people here on Twitter. The Lightninghood Twitter channel, of course. Crypto Pura Vida, Mauricio, then Brandon Bailey, of course, and the very mute, but still very much alive. Hopefully, he might be a dog after all. Curly Dream. We talked about some awesome stuff, especially, of course, Lightninghood, and what you are doing here with this awesome resource page. And it really is one of the best resource pages out there, especially regarding Lightning Network. So all things Lightning here is a high quality, seamless, endless resource page that is very, very much needed. And I love these types of pages. And personally, curating one of these is great because you get to, again, condense all the amazing knowledge and information and share it with others, and that's awesome. We also talked about
spotlight to our or your thesis to our spotlight section, by the way, when you get it done. So,
oh, awesome! That would be great. Well, maybe then when I get it done, you can set up a multi-sig for the Lightninghood.
Ooh, I like it.
Well, talking about multi-sig, we also talked about custodial wallets, for whom, of course, a multi-sig would be very, very interesting. So something like Tip and Me, or, Zigzag is here, the swapping, which we talked about later, but then also, for example, Blue Wallet or the Cash Wallet, right? These are all services that take control over your keys, so it's not your money anymore, but thus you don't have the responsibility of having good, high-quality management. So it's a trade-off, right? But if you want to have a mobile spend-only wallet, then I can very much recommend the Eclair mobile wallet. And as we said earlier, they are working on getting receive and send to this mobile wallet. That would be fantastic. And of course, we also talked a little bit about the Neutrino clients and all the cool stuff happening over there. And Matt Carolla and his great work on BetterHash and other ways of decentralizing mining pools. That's also something that we talked a bit about. And different strategies of balancing out your node. So one would be, of course, to buy inbound liquidity. That is, the boring way. Then you could do some custodial wallet trick or some swapping tricks. Yes, also cool. But I think what is much more interesting is something like the Lightninghood liquidity pool that you get together with a couple friends and you build your semi-trust chain, right? Or trust network with peers that you can communicate with, that you actually know. Maybe it's just the alias, right? You don't have to know them in person with the real meat space identity, but well, why not, right? It works with both ways, even with pseudonymous, as long as you can build up the reputation. And I think that will be a tremendous help to building up a quality and desirable routing nodes. So Piers, thank you very much also for joining us here in the chat. That was awesome. We had some great communications, and of course, also great to have one of the co-hosts here with Curly Dream in the chat. That is awesome. Piers, if you like the show and if you'd like to continue the daily videos, I would very much appreciate your support here on Tallycoin, which is awesome. We have. Where is it? 25 donations. That is great. The last one was today, a Back32 address. That's awesome. Oh, no, wait, that's yesterday it was. So that was great. Of here, 700,000 Satoshis. That is awesome. Thank you very much. And of course, both on-chain and off-chain, and also Paynim accepted. So the entire thing here, very thank you much to all the subscribers and the donors here to Patreon. Sorry, to Tallycoin. It really motivates me here to keep this going. And of course, it's always good to have a couple more Satoshis to hodl to. That is nice. So Piers, I would say this is pretty much has been it. We've talked about quite a lot. And I would say, Piers, see you all on the next show. Bye-bye.